So, we're going to start. We've got quite a lot of different topics that we're going to be looking at today. And first of all, we are going to be beginning with question forms. Now, question forms are a bit different in English compared to what they are like in Ukrainian. And we have a lot of little nuances, little areas that we need to consider when we are looking at these question forms. So let's start first of all by looking at the types of questions that we have in English. Now, there are two, excuse me, there are two main types of questions in English. We have what we call closed questions and open questions. And first of all, we will consider the idea of a closed question. Now, if a question is closed, this means that we can answer this only with yes or no. So, for example, we can say a normal sentence, he is Ukrainian. If we make this into a question, is he Ukrainian? We can answer this with yes, he is, or no, he isn't. Closed questions have to start in a very specific way. They can begin either with some form of the verb be, like we have here, is he Ukrainian, with an auxiliary verb це допоміжне дієслово в українській мові, or a modal auxiliary verb. And these are the only ways that we can start. So we have, for example, be, is he Ukrainian? Якщо ми вживаємо допоміжне дієслово, то у нас, наприклад, for example, do you live in Kyiv? And modal auxiliary, will you be away for a long time? Will you be away for a long time? So these are all closed questions, and these are the way that we start with be, with an auxiliary verb, or with a modal auxiliary verb. And we can answer these questions with yes or no. The second type that we have are called open questions. And open questions start with a question word. So these are words like who, what, where, when, why, and so on. So, for example, we can say, what time did he arrive, for example. And when we have these question words, we cannot answer yes or no. We need to give a fuller answer. And so this is why they are called open questions, because we have to give more information. We cannot just say yes or no in this situation. When we think about the simple tenses, with the simple tenses in closed questions, we usually begin with an auxiliary verb, and this is often do, does, or did when we have the simple tenses. So, for example, if we have present simple, where do you live? If we have past simple, as an example, what did he do for a living? So we can use, or if we have does as well, let me just add that in. Why does he like football? So in the simple tenses, we use do, does, and did to add for these as auxiliaries. And as you can see, these auxiliary verbs, these допоміжне дієслово, they go before the subject. So where do you live? Why does he like football? What did he do for a living? So the auxiliary verb goes before the subject when we make this kind of questions. Now, in conversation, when we speak in the normal everyday English, not the сучасне англійській мові. Movelius, hello, дуже радий, що ви з нами сьогодні. When we have our normal spoken English, what we often do is we often have a normal positive sentence, but we can use this as a question. And it all depends on the way that we say these sentences. So for example, we can say something like, you've sent the tickets. Normal intonation, this is just a normal sentence. But we can change our voice and we can say, you've sent the tickets? And we can make this into a question. We make our voice go up, and this makes it into a question. Now, we use this when we want to check information, or if we want to show surprise at something. So if we say, you've sent the tickets, we want to check that you did this before, or you told us this and we are surprised that you've sent the tickets. So we can use the intonation to go up at normal sentences to make these kinds of questions. Now, when we make questions in English, there is often a lot of confusion, trudności, problems, when we use the word which and when we use the word what in questions. And the difference is this. If we have a limited choice, then normally we use which. So for example, I can say, which cake would you like to try first? We have a choice of cakes, and I want to know which one you would like to have. It is a limited choice. If it is an unlimited choice, then this is when we should use what in questions. So for example, I can say, what cake do you like best? Here it's not limited, it's any cake in the world you can choose. So we use what in this situation, which is for the limited choices. Now, another problem or another difficulty that can happen in creating questions is the use of prepositions in question. Preposition це прийменник українською, and the position of the preposition in the sentence is very important in the English language. So, the way that it works for us, in normal, everyday questions, we put the preposition at the end of the question. So, for example, who did you buy the book for? So put it in capitals just to highlight it. So the preposition usually goes at the end of the question. Another example, actually that's a bad example. Which job did you apply for? Again, preposition, end of the question. Now, it is possible to say, for whom did you buy the book? Grammatically, it's possible. It's okay. But this is very, very formal, це дуже офіціально, і тому, як зазвичай, ми так не кажемо. Це трохи старомодно, також я можу сказати. And this is a very typical problem for Ukrainian speakers because, for example, if we have a question like, who are you playing with? In Ukrainian, we would say, з ким ти граєш? So, з at the start of the sentence. And so very often Ukrainian speakers would say, with whom are you playing? Which, again, grammatically, it's okay. It's a pomylka. But it sounds very, very old-fashioned. It sounds very unusual. So, as a general guide, if you have a preposition, so for, with, at, on, in, i tak dalej, we put them at the end of the question and not at the start, because it sounds very formal, very official, and it's just not how we usually speak. A couple more things I would like to add about questions before we move to our next topic. And we're going to have a look now at two other types of questions that we have, which are subject questions and object questions. Now, these are very important because the way that we construct, build our sentences depends on if we have a subject question or an object question. So, first of all, what actually is a subject question? A subject question is a question where the answer is the subject. So, for example, my możemy zapytати na przykład, who won the match? And answer, Wolyn-Lutsk, our commander, won the match. So here u nas jest zapytanie who, put that in capitals, and the answer is Wolyn. Wolyn is the subject of the sentence. Now, when the question matches to the subject, we do not use do, does, did, i tak dalej. We don't use these dopomyślne słowo to make the question. We just use a normal, regular, past simple, present simple, whatever it might be. So that's how we do it. We just use the normal, regular, past simple to make the question. The alternative is an object question, and this is when the answer is the object of the sentence. So, for example, we can say, where did you live? And the answer, I lived in... let's change it to Kherson. Why not? It's Polynomial. So, I lived in Kherson. So, here, the answer of the sentence is not the subject. The answer is the object of the sentence. And so now we need to use do, did, does, i tak dalej. So it's very important when you create a question that you think, okay, is the answer to the question the subject or the object? And then that will tell you if we need to use did, do, does, or if we use the normal positive sentence order as we have here. And one other thing I want to add about making questions is we have special ways of showing emotion when we create a question in English. There's a couple of ways we can do this. One very typical way that we can do this is to add the suffix ever to the question word. So, for example, we can say, what did you do? Proste zwyczajne zapytanie. But we can also say, whatever did you do? I jakщо ми кажемо, whatever did you do, this can be annoyance, you can be annoyed, or it can be surprise to something. And you can do this with almost all question words, whatever, whoever, however, and so on. And the only one that you cannot do this with is with whose. We cannot say whose ever, because reasons, it's quite complicated. But however, whoever, whenever, why ever, whatever, we can add this ever to show that we are surprised or annoyed when we ask this question to the person who we're talking to. Another typical way that we can show surprise or annoyance is by adding a phrase. We just use what did you do, by adding a phrase in here, in this space between the question word and the verb. Now, what can we use here? Now, if you are being polite or standard English, możemy tak сказати, we can say, what on earth did you do? What the heck did you do? We can also say, what the hell did you do? Is also fine. There is another alternative that I am sure all of you are thinking of, which is this word. I can't say it because this will be on YouTube later and I don't want to get demonetized for the swearing. But this word beginning with F is also possible. Of course, no, so lajka, it's very aggressive, ale ludzie tak кажуть, тому можемо так сказати, what the did you do? Це теж може бути варіант.